What if the best chapter in life hasn't even been written yet? Welcome to the Aging Well podcast, where we explore the science, stories, and strategies behind living a longer, healthier, and more purposeful life. I am your host, Dr. Jeff Armstrong, an exercise physiologist with a passion for making science simple and life better as we age, with my co-host, Corbin Bruton. Our guest today is New York Times bestselling author Patricia Crisafulli, returning to the podcast to share her latest novel, The Secrets of the Old Post Cemetery. Patricia earned a Master's of Fine Arts degree at age 52 and launched her literary career later in life, inspiring readers everywhere to embrace creativity, learning, and personal growth no matter their age. We'll talk about her new book, the lessons she's learned about writing and life, and why it's never too late to pursue your passions and keep aging well. Patricia, welcome back to the Aging Well podcast. The last time we talked about your following dreams later in life. How has your journey evolved since we last spoke?
Well, more dreams pursued, another one fulfilled. I have a new book coming out very soon, another in my mystery series. But along the way of pursuing those dreams, and goals, as I call them, right? I've also taken more time to seek and hopefully find sort of moments of joy, especially in nature. And that's something that has been enriching my life. So along with those, pursue those dreams and set those goals, which I am all over that. I've also said, wait, in the moment, what can I take in that feeds me, gives me fuel to continue the journey?
So what prompted that shift in mindset?
It sort of just happened. I wish I could say that I woke up with this great sense of enlightenment. But if I can be perfectly honest, it was when I heard an owl in the backyard and went, that is so cool. And then almost every night I go out and listen, and sometimes I hear it and sometimes I don't. But I found that I made time in my schedule. Dinner time changed. Everything had to, be the optimal window for maybe catching the hoo, hoo, hoo. And I realized that this, 5 seconds of sound bites from my owl pal, who was a great horned owl, over a few minutes, and also the silence tonight, was giving me an experience in the moment that I could not replicate with my goals alone. So it sort of just happened.
So it kind of seems like when the owl was saying, who, you took it as like, who am I?
Oh,
right?
I like that. I like that. Because, I'm a very goal-oriented, action-oriented person. I always have been. And so I can very easily be all about what, right? And I do think about who, my values, what I stand for, my relationships with my husband and my family, and all that's important. But even beyond that, there's a little kernel of who, which is just me person, minus anything else. Just at the center of my being, who do I want to be in the world? Do I want to be someone who notices? Do I want to be someone who is joyful? Do I want to be someone who listens? Do I want to be someone who is open to experiencing beauty, sort of on the wing? I'd like to be, and it becomes that who becomes aspirational.
Yeah, it's amazing how nature can talk to us and kind of point us in that right direction for what we are supposed to be doing in the moment, and how our purpose evolves.
Yes. What I try to see is the interconnectedness of it. So I'm just about to launch a new book, the third book in my Ohnita Harbor Mystery Series. And it's exciting because I took some extra time to write and revise and really launch this book. And it's coming out in October. It's The Secrets of the Old Post Cemetery. It's very exciting. And I'm going to be traveling and doing these things. I got all these things lined up for it. And then there's my nightly walk in the dusk, early evening time to listen to the owl. And while those seem completely divergent, they actually complement each other. So to not beat myself up for spending too many hoo-hoo moments or to be goal, 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 but to say, how does one refresh and revitalize the other? How does my goal setting help me say, hey, I need to kind of take a step back and recharge? And how does that recharging send me back into my goals and dreams with renewed energy? So while very different, they really are interconnected. First of all, because they're about me, but even more so, I'm being conscious of what these experiences do in the moment to provide some joy, some clarity, and another deep breath.
So you've just underscored with 2 lines, as you type the double underline rather than the single underline, our principle of the SPIES model of wellness and conscious aging, spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, and social, and all that interconnectedness. And I wholeheartedly believe that we're starting to see much more of a unification of the spiritual and the physical dimensions in our society and in our humankind.
I think there's a hunger for it. However people want to define that, right? It could be in something traditional practice. It could be something that's more cultural or recalling an indigenous wisdom. It could be something incredibly self-made or see all of the above. But I think there's a calling to us for something that is bigger. I was listening to actually a podcast that because obviously we all love our podcasts and we feel like we have wisdom coming in our ears instead of noise and nonsense. The need for awe, AWE, in our lives. And yes, somebody could, scale the Himalayas or go into the rainforest in the Amazonian area. Great if that's possible. And sometimes people's occupations or aspirations take them to far-flung places, but there is also awe to be found in your own backyard.
Well, we could go down a whole nother tangent here, but let's talk a little bit about the book.
Yeah. And I'll link this somehow all together. I'm not sure how, but I'm working on it.
Well, tell us about the book, The Secret Old Post Cemetery, and how this third book expands into the Ohnita Harbor Mystery Series.
Well, thank you. So it's the third in the series. And so I did write each book as a standalone because that's really important to me because sometimes you end up reading the middle of a series. I know I've done that with other authors and said, I'm not sure where I am in the series, but the story itself should be very satisfying, right? But if you read them as an arc, right, as a continuum, my characters evolve, new characters come in, new challenges. It's a kind of a classic murder mystery with a literary twist, but it's character driven as this subgenre of it's known as the cozy is known. It's not the action thriller and gunfights and all. It is a classic mystery that is taking the characters deeper into themselves as it also advances deeper into the plot line. It's set in my hometown area in northern New York State, but it's going to be enjoyable to people in the Pacific Northwest and the middle of the country and the Midwest and the South and everywhere because it has that small town vibe of quirky characters. And the Old Post Cemetery is an actual place. It's a cemetery on the grounds of a fort in my hometown that goes back to the French and Indian War in the 1750s. There are graves there for the unknown soldiers of the Revolutionary War. So it is hallowed ground. It is historic ground. And so when I was a kid and I saw the Old Post Cemetery and I was riding my bike, I thought everybody had a fort and a historic cemetery in their backyard. Not true. It stayed with me. And it gave me an entree to look at history, families, fractured relationships. I'm trying not to do any spoilers. And what happens when people deeply disagree, which pulls them apart. That's a story old as time. And the chance for healing and redemption, even if it takes place 2.5 centuries later. Because I do believe that the mysteries do take us into a sense of awe, right? Our hearts pound during the scenes where it's very exciting, and the main character, Gabriella, she faces danger. Her life is at stake. But it also takes us into our own resilience and our own sense of wonder about the people who came before us, about the history of the places where we live, and even the topography and how that shapes history and shapes current life and our current experience of a place. It's set on the shores of Lake Ontario, but we could easily transplant in our minds, the rocky, craggy Oregon coast and some of those hidden beaches. Or, when I lived in the Midwest and looking at the vast expanse of Lake Michigan, and it felt like you were seeing something that was just an endless body of water, even though intellectually it's not that place. Topography, history, mystery takes us into ourselves, and then I think more broadly into the universe.
I think, Tricia, you need to have a little bit more passion about what you do.
It's boring, isn't it?
So many of our viewers and listeners will recall your story of earning a Master's of Fine Arts at 52, which doesn't make sense because you're only 42.
I know. It's some of that quantum mathematics that goes negative.
Yeah. But how has continued learning shaped your perspective on aging well?
Oh, I think for me, it has enabled me to age well. Number one. There's the obvious that it keeps your mind active, but I also think lifelong learning is humbling. And when I say humbling, I don't mean humiliation, clearly, but the humility to open my mind and say, I don't know. And a small thing, we all have our little apps on our phones, identify this bird, identify this plant. And I saw something really pretty, and it had this little quirky viney thing with these little bright berries. I didn't know what it was. Click. And my phone told me it was a pink honeysuckle vine. Like, it's a small thing, but the humility of not knowing and saying, I should find out. I wonder what that is. It keeps us young. It energizes us with curiosity about people, places, things, nature, locations, history. What did it used to be called? What is it now? Trying new experiences. For me, that was formal education in my 50s and a 5-year program and a thesis and 18, classes and, but it could be that. It could be the extension class you take for fun. It could be an experience you do with a park district or your local county parks and recreation. I'm teaching a class here in Eugene, little shout out, on a 1-day class on mystery writing. Like, there's all kinds of things that can engage us without overwhelming us. But it's just that idea of the humility to say, I don't know, but wouldn't it be fun to find out? And to learn from someone else who may have a very different experience than I do.
If you're enjoying the Aging Well podcast, be sure to like, subscribe, or follow on your favorite platform so you will never miss an episode. And if you find our conversations helpful, please share the podcast with a friend, because aging is something we're all doing, and we're better at doing it together. And support our guests in this podcast financially by visiting the affiliate links in the episode description below, and use the links or codes provided for discounts on products we have vetted and feel comfortable recommending to our valued viewers and listeners. Thank you, and now back to the podcast.
That's funny. That's actually how my wife and I first started. When we first started dating, we were dating during the COVID pandemic. And so you can't really court someone the traditional way when the whole world is shut down. So what we ended up doing is we would end up driving to these historical sites, and then on the way there, we would look up the history. So I'd be driving and she'd be looking it up, and then we'd be kind of learning and growing. And then once we got there, we would explore, and we're like, oh man, this must have been that trail that famous explorer went on, or this must have been where the war took place, and this must have been where they discovered this new species of plant. So it was just, I completely think that is a great way. Never never stop having a hunger for knowledge and that curiosity of what's this and how does that work and who discovered that and where did that come from or where did that name come from? So I'm all on board with that.
Oh, I
I
can
love that idea.
relate because one of the settings in The Secrets of the Old Post Cemetery is a little tiny peninsula that I call Peninsula Point. I do have some fun with my topography. I move things around in New York State. You know, it's like I make a gorge where there's no gorge, and I kind of move a mountain over and deepen a lake and a few things. And I put that in my author's note because I do want to keep it the mystery alive and sort of creating some places. So this Peninsula Point is actually an elongation of a little cove and a little, piece of land that juts out into Lake Ontario that's called Spy Island. My cousin Melanie, shout out to cousin Melanie, took me there a couple years ago because of the history of it, to your point. And it's a New York State historic site. You pull off, you walk down this path over this little wooden bridge. It's really, really slippery because it's covered with moss, and you get to a marsh. And there's a plaque there. So here's what happened during the American Revolution. A guy named Silas Town was walking along, and sound carries over water. And there was a British commander plotting their attack on another fort in New York State. And they were saying things like, boy, sure is going to be good to go attack that fort. Wow, I guess we leave on Wednesday. That'll be cool. Or, something along those lines. Silas hears it, runs back, reports it to the Continental Army. They had him off at the pass, and it's a turning point in the revolution. You would never know if you just walked down this little path and over that cool little bridge hanging onto the handrail because it's slippery and looked at that nice marsh. But suddenly you realize you're walking in the path of history. So the Old Post Cemetery, this historic place, I weave that all together in a murder mystery that goes over 2.5 centuries. It's mostly modern with a little bit of historic stuff. But that's exactly the same experience you are having with your now wife of where is this land? What does this come from? Who was there before? There is history and mystery wrapped up there too. And I hope that people enjoy the plot line I've put together. I hope they then go replicate it, minus the murders, replicate it in literally their backyard or their next wanderings. Who walked the land and why? And what conflicts did they have? And what can you learn and absorb and be part of the healing of whatever happened?
Right. Well, that's a perfect segue to my next question, and which is how do writing and storytelling keep you intellectually and emotionally engaged?
Well, I should say something really nice like, oh, it's very refreshing. I enter into my creativity and I come up with a, storyline. And at the end of the day of writing several hundred or maybe even a few thousand words, I just feel so completely validated. But really it's kind of like, I love it. Oh, I really don't like it. Oh, it's great. Oh man, I've made a mistake. Oh, it's perfect. Don't touch a word. I really want to rewrite that scene. So, the journey of writing is always a process of revision and rewriting and revisiting. And it's that openness, right? And that humility to even learn from my characters or my storyline that it wants to go in a little bit different direction. And I have to go back and make that possible. So it's constantly intellectually stimulating, including when I'm not writing, when I'm out running, right? And suddenly I stop and go, oh, wait a minute. Those two people should say this or do that. And that will really either, be a red herring or advance the plot. So it's like when you watch a streaming series and you're trying to figure out what's going to happen next. Well, that's the kind of thing that's going on in my brain as I'm trying to figure out the next story or the next scene in the story.
I think the only difference is you're the one that's creating what's happening next versus us reading or viewing it. That's already been created and established, and we're just trying to figure out if we're right. You're creating and establishing the next move, that's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I always think that trying to figure out what you're going to see next is like having training wheels for taking the ride into the mystery writing yourself. It's, I start with a premise of a theme I want to explore. And I also really wanted to get more into history in the third book, and the American Revolution and the War of 1812. All of it happened in the hometown where I grew up. It's like, well, it's there for the taking. Plus, to relate these themes to some modern life, and then to think about what would bring the reader in constantly and layer it in so that there's not just like one thing to solve, and then it was kind of a bit of a cat's cradle of the knots, making sure that all the pieces did align, even tangentially, because what happens in modern time and what happens in historic time are not exactly related. It's not the same family. There's no spoiler. It's not the same the people, but the topography and thematically there was alignment, and then really cinching that up at the end.
So how do you do it? You go out for a run and you have these ideas. How do you keep it in mind? Do you just stop running, go home and write? Or do you have like a little recorder you carry with you? You have your phone?
Yeah,
something like that?
People are supposed to say, oh, I carry around a notebook. And I do have a lovely notebook for my ideas, and I'm always leaving it at home. So, it's got lots of blank pages. But what happens is I'm a morning writer. I get out of bed in the morning and I'm still in my bathrobe and I'm hitting the keyboard and I'm writing. And then I'm like, oh, I got to take a break. And then I go out running or hiking. And then that's when it starts to percolate, and I come back and I either, which very often, revise right then, or I do write a note, or the mental note is pretty deep and I don't forget it, except when I do. And then I have to come up with another idea. But that's kind of my vibe. Write, run, come back, do some more stuff.
Because for me, I have these bright ideas and then get distracted from other things. And it's like, oh crap, what was that idea? What was I going to write about? What was I going to, record about? Or, how was I going to change my class or my lecture or whatever?
Good ideas always come back. They always come back.
That is true. But they always seem to come back in the middle of the night, and then you're like lying in bed trying to make sure you remember it so that you wake up and you deal with it the next day.
I get a dream or something that in my main character, the love interest that's introduced in book 1, who continues, Daniel Red Deer, I dreamed that character. Years ago, when this was just a sketch of a sketch of a sketch, before it was my master's thesis, right? I had a dream in which this character, and saw him clearly, long gray hair, pulled back, and he said, my name is Daniel Red Deer. My name is Daniel Red Deer. My name is Daniel Red Deer. I woke up and I was like, who? What? And then I was like, oh, I know exactly who you are. And I captured it. Same thing happened in the third book, where there's a secondary character named, his last name is Brooks, and I saw him all in gray, and my character Gabriella walks up to him and says, "Hello, Mr. Brooks." And I woke up and I was like, boy, not exactly the most exciting character. Then I realized why he was dressed the way he was. He was a pharmacist. And I was like, oh, I can do something with that. So anyway, I guess my brain never completely shuts off.
You always got that owl saying who in your head, right? Who is that person?
Who is that character?
Who's the next character?
Yeah. So, we talk a lot about, our SPIES model, well-centered fitness, and this whole concept of wellness, spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, and social. Do you see creativity as a form of wellness, especially as we age?
Oh, absolutely. And I think creativity should be defined as broadly as possible. There are people who say, oh, you write. Oh, gosh, I wish I could write. I just I can't, I don't like it, I never was good, whatever. Or they say to be creative, you need to be able to sing, with or on the stage or in the choir, or you have to be able to paint. But your creativity could very well be, in the garden or in the kitchen or in the way you arrange things. And I think creativity can also be appreciation for all of those things. You're opening up your creative mind. And that it's just inviting us to new and deeper experiences. And it's also perhaps seeing ourselves a little differently. And I'll give you a story. This was many years ago. I was talking with someone who, delightful lady, woman. She just said to me, "Oh, you're a creative. I don't have a creative bone in my body." And I said, "I find that very hard to believe. How did you come to that conclusion?" And she told me a story that when she was about 8 years old, an adult in her life said, "Oh, honey, just don't try because you're not very creative." And it went all the way in. Now, we're not going to vilify that person. We don't know who that person was, or I'm not going to share the occupant. It was probably an offhanded comment. It might have been said with a little bit of smile and jest, but it went all the way in. I invite all of us to say who told us or who thought, or when we had a belief about ourselves that we weren't good at something, okay? And to say, is that really true? And do I want to change that fact? Now, I am not good at basketball. I am 5'1", and I couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. Okay. I can run or walk from here to heck and back, but so me not being good at basketball is just not really all that high on my list. I like to watch basketball. Yay, run. Okay. Never going to happen. Okay. So that's not really a very emotionally important to me, but there is something I've always wanted to try, or a belief about myself that I want to change. This is the time to do it. And if not now, when? And it's not to make the other person wrong. It's to open up more possibility for us to say, I'm okay. I'm okay. I don't have to be the best. I don't have to be the worst. I can be somewhere in the middle and be okay and know that I did try something and it was joyful.
So, in your view, what role does passion play in living a long, meaningful life?
I think it's what gets us up in the morning. I mean, you call it, laughter or joy or, just intensity. I just think it's openness. It's a vitality. Today is a good day. I love doing these podcasts. So I do feel very passionate about this. And we're talking about writing and my mystery novels, which are passions of mine. There are days when I feel like a slug. There are days when the slug on the sidewalk has more energy than I do, because life is hard sometimes and we all have stuff going on and the world is nuts, right? And it's hard to always keep up that passion. That's when I say, go seek a little bit of joy. The bird at the feeder, the light,
come on,
the light through the leaves, even something that just, catches your eye. And I think it can ignite passion. We're here. Every day really, truly is a gift. And, if we get to this point in our lives, we've lost people who are close to us. And I think that's a kind of a little reminder that we all have an expiration date. So if today's the day you're here, make the most of it. And if you feel good, then go show it and go enjoy it and go put a little of that life force out in the world around you. You owe it to yourself, and you owe it to your community and your family.
And when you say something that catches your eye, my first thought actually goes to the opening scene of Gladiator, where they're just about to go into a battlefield and have this huge epic war. And right before they do, Russell Crowe's character looks off in the distance and he sees this little tiny bird just perched on a branch, and he's just looking at it and he's just smiling and he's taking it in like just, wow, this is so beautiful, captivating my eye. And then he watches it flutter away and he's smiling as it passes by. And then he focuses right back on the battlefield. And it's like, even in absolute chaos or just something that's you're fighting your own battle, you can always find that little glimmer of hope or peace or joy, even in that. And so I really appreciate you sharing
I
that
love
with me.
the way you described that scene, because first of all, we also know something about that character, that he is someone
Right.
who would notice, right? It softens him,
Right.
humanizes him, but it's also a symbol of freedom. And as you know, historically, gladiators had to fight for their freedom. If they won enough
Yep.
battles, they could stop doing that and and hopefully live long. And a few did, many didn't. But it's also a reminder that even in the midst of real difficulty, there is something that can just give even a moment of respite. And when we plug into that passion, I do think we feel like we put the charger into the wall socket. We get, not with a jolt, but with a little inflow. In the opening scene of not the prologue, not the historic prologue, but the opening scene of The Secrets of the Old Post Cemetery, my character Gabriella, who now, in addition to being amateur sleuth and authenticator of historic objects and hometown executive director of the library, is also an adjunct teaching one class at the community college on history, artifacts and authentication. She takes her class down to see something called the Trader's Map, which is the artifact at the heart of the story that connects past and present. And she's out and she's explaining it and she's talking about it. And it's a very simple little sketch of the shoreline, incredibly inaccurate, which is part of its provenance and part of its history and mystery. And she says to the class, it is not about the things. Even if something is valuable, even if something is a treasure, even if something is, highly collectible, it's not about the thing. It's about its story. That's what brings them to life. And to interpret those objects, to say, this is what it is, this is what it does, that's her passion. And my hope is that it kind of lifts the reader out of just following the clues to say, wait a minute, what is it about this clue that ignites me? Maybe I do want to go look at, old maps. Maybe I have that passion. Maybe I should go visit my local historical society. Maybe, like Russell Crowe, I should watch the birds fly by before I go into the next conference call or Zoom call. It's going to embattle me. These moments that connect, that spark for us, tell us where we can look for more passion and more vitality.
So you have all this passion, all this creativity. The viewer and the listener is probably thinking, this has just been a smooth road for Tricia. She's published. It's never been an issue. Rejection has never been a problem. But you've written about turning rejection into redirection. What does that look like in your own life?
It's so hard. I mean, the rejection is, and it started because I wanted to do this when I was in my 20s. And people would say things like, the nicest rejections would say things like, you have some natural talent. The story shows promise. And then came that word, but. But there's this, or but there's that, and but there's this, and but there's that. And it felt terrible because it felt like not just like this project has a problem, or this piece of documentation, or this project that you're trying to fulfill for a client. It's not just this thing you did, like you dug a hole, but it wasn't deep enough or wide enough. It felt so personal. It was me on that page. It's me. You're judging me, especially in my 20s. Much therapy later. But I would say I'm not going to do this again. I'm never going to do this again. And then but I'm a writer, so I can't not write, double negative intended. So I kept going, and I did get some smaller things published. I got some nonfiction books done, but bestseller as it turned out. But the creative process kept pulling me into my heart, which was fictional storytelling. And that's why, after being so tired of the close, but not quite, I said, doggone it, I'm going to get an MFA, a Master's in Fine Arts from Northwestern University in creative writing, and I'm going to learn all I can and polish my craft. I ended up winning the Creative Thesis Award, but it was a long journey of not yet, not quite, and just saying, I wanted to keep going. Yes, it's resilience, but I also cried buckets of tears and felt terrible about myself. And then I would go back and do it again. And I don't know, I guess that makes me brave or a little bit, delusional, but it worked. But I kept thinking it was going to lead me into a deeper sense of myself. I couldn't see my life without doing that, without trying. And I'm so glad that I did keep trying. And I just keeping trying is just there. It's hope. It is hope embodied and hope personified is to keep trying.
It's funny that you're bringing up the word but, because recently I was just given this great advice. Someone recently told me, never underestimate the power of the word but, and pay attention to people that say but often. So like you were saying, oh, you were really great, but hey, you did all these wonderful things, but, because now that but negates everything that you're going through. Or even ourselves as we speak will be like, I know we're not supposed to do this, but I'm going to do it anyways. Right. So I don't know. Ever since I got that advice, I started listening to people, and I've tried to remove but from my vocabulary, and I think it's great advice. Speaking of advice, what advice would you give someone over the age of 50 who feels like it's too late to start something new?
Well, the obvious comeback is it's never too late. You're alive. Why don't you do it? And I think we believe that there's this huge, long journey it's going to take. If I think about how long it took me to get here, I'm like, well, I'd be about 110 if I started over. But you don't have to. And we're not starting at this age, right? We're not starting at square one. We're actually at square 27. And you're like, but I want to play the cello, and I never played the cello. But okay, but you do have other experiences that are going to inform that passion. You listen to chamber music. You love orchestra. You love symphony. You maybe as a kid you played a little folk guitar. There's an experience in your previous, life, in your past, that has brought you to this decision. Understand that those experiences are going to give you a little jump start to get going. You also know some things about yourself. I'm really cool with the fact that this is only going to be for fun. I am not going to compete. I am not trying to get that. Okay, that's great. Then that also gives you permission to play, right? To be a beginner and to play. And also, like, what else are you going to do? You can only do so much Wordle, at some point. Why not try it? Why not? Like, what's the worst? And then you take a class, or you get a workshop, or you ask somebody who's good at it to coach you or mentor you. And now you created a friendship and a community. Why not? Because but is we can replace but with and, right? Yep. I know I'm not supposed to say this, and I'm going to take a risk. That kind of changes it. But also points us into what we need to do next. It's great that you really want to, start that new novel, Tricia, but you need to sit down in the morning and really get it going. Yeah, you're right. That's good. You're right. I could say and, but, I also think but is what kicks us in the, to jumpstart sometimes.
One thing I really appreciate the work you do is that you tie in with others. You encourage others in their work and you create community. You stress community. So how has founding Faith, Hope, and Fiction deepened your connection to community purpose? And you might want to kind of backtrack a little bit. The viewers and listeners who maybe didn't see the first episode with you might not know exactly what your Faith, Hope, and Fiction really is.
Great. I'm happy to do so. So faithhopeandfiction.com. Yeah. So it's spelled out faithhopeandfiction.com is a literary website. I started, 2007, 2008, I think. It's free, doesn't even have a single ad on there. It's my labor of love. And one of the ways I wanted to create community was to start publishing my own little short stories and a few essays. And then I, publish other writers. I give lots and lots of feedback. It's a committee of one. So we don't publish a whole lot, 3-4 pieces every couple of months. And what I found is I have a loyal following because people know that they can experiment a little bit. I'm really clear on our guidelines. We're looking for things that inspire and entertain. The faith part is not dogmatic, okay? It is not a certain faith tradition. It's just that thing that uplifts. It's also a faith in yourself. It's also just a leap of faith that is necessary for any creative endeavor. And yes, it can also be a faith experience as long as it's not exclusionary or preaches that, I have all the answers. And then hope, because boy, do we need it. And fiction, because even though I do publish nonfiction and essays as well, it's through stories that we tell our deepest truth. So Faith, Hope, and Fiction has allowed me to connect with readers, fellow writers, many of whom I've never met in my life and probably never will, but are always so appreciative. I've translated that into a new experience. I mentioned it briefly before. I joined Word Crafters. We're here in Eugene, Oregon, where I live, which is a wonderful community of writers. And I've become a workshop leader for them. Once or twice a year, I participate in something. And it's super important to me to give back what I've learned. I went through that big MFA program. I learned all this stuff. I have the benefit of hearing from incredible faculty at Northwestern. And if I guard that and I say, no, this is just for me, I was in the program, then I'm being selfish. And that's not the who I want to be, right? So if I can share some inspiration, some experiences along the way, and some craft advice and craft exercises, then I'm sharing. And my learning goes deeper as well, because if you really want to know something, teach it.
You're probably one of my favorite people ever. I love your energy. I love your passion. You're just a little light of energy and just a light of inspiration, and I love it.
Well,
that's who you are.
Well, I'm going to tell you a little deeper who. And I know you don't say this in public, but why not? I was a sad little kid.
Really?
I was a sad little kid. I was isolated and lonely and bullied. So I developed a very, very, very rich interior life. Told myself stories and played out in the fields and whatever. And then, kind of got it all together. It's called growing up. But I never kind of forgot what it felt like to be that sad, lonely, little bullied little kid. So hopefully it's given me empathy. It also helps me create quirky characters that are really, really flawed and have lots and lots and lots of pain. Right. But I think it's also the truth for a whole lot of people, right? Most of us, so while somebody's like the eternal optimist, yeah, but often there's a varied life experience behind it. So I'm so pleased that you say you're such a positive person. That is who I want to be. And I also appreciate it because it hasn't always been that way. And it isn't always that way for everyone. We all have episodes where it's, not so fun. But when we go back to that set point of who we are, which is somebody who wants to learn and wants to experience joy and wants days to be exciting in a little way or a big way, it lifts out of what's going on to remind us who you really are.
I think that life experience is almost essential for us to figure out and to develop into who we are, right?
Yes,
Well,
absolutely.
I just want to let you know. Oh, okay. I just want to let you know you're an inspiration to me, and I would love for you to continue this and inspire others. So, where can our viewers and our listeners connect with you and or find your books? Where is that available for
Okay,
them?
well, thank you for that. I can also share some links and things with you that will help. But one place to find me is on my website, that faithhopeandfiction.com, faithhopeandfiction.com.
Sounds like
It
a
does,
song.
yeah. And everyone, it took me a long time to be able to spell it, without missing one. Also, you have my name, Patricia Crisafulli. Your favorite, online book retailers out there, not just Amazon. There's also Barnes and Noble, and don't forget bookshop.org, which is an online retailer and supports independent bookstores. So, you can find me and my books, also Goodreads. I'm there, and the newest one. Shout out for the newest one, The Secrets of the Old Post Cemetery. It's number 3 in the series. If you didn't read 1 and 2, don't worry about it. I'll catch you up with number 3. That's where you can find me.
Well, so finally, as always, we ask our guests, and you've been asked this before, but it's been a year and a half, so we can get a little update. What are you currently doing personally to age well?
Okay, well, I've increased my mileage every day. My neighbors say to me, I always see you walking. I think that they have this perception that that's all I do. I'm like, no, I'm actually a corporate communications consultant with a busy day job. I am taking more time to notice, to say yes to episodes of adventure, even if it means giving up a half day of writing. It's like, it will be there. Go do this if it's nourishing, and to try also to be more involved in my community with various volunteer things. I think more important than ever is the grassroots, and to make sure that we're present in our communities and nurturing, helping in hopeful ways.
Wow, wow. Hey, Tricia, is there anything that we missed that maybe you'd like to share in addition to this awesome conversation?
Just one thing is that everybody has a story. It might be a memory. It might be an anecdote. It might be an idea. Don't dismiss it. If it keeps coming back, write it down. If it doesn't sound as good on paper as it did in your head, don't worry about it. Just keep writing it. If it keeps pulling at you, take a writer's workshop. Just learn to do it. Don't ignore the stories. And if you don't want to write them down and you don't like the idea, then sit down and tell a friend, have I got a story for you? Because that is the heart of our real conversations, are the stories we share. So if there's a memory that makes you laugh, call up your cousin or a sibling or an old friend and say, do you remember? Or tell someone, because those stories are your treasure and they're timeless. And that's what will never go out of style.
This has been an awesome conversation. As always, Tricia, I love having you on this podcast. We'll have you back on when the 4th book comes out.
My pleasure.
Really enjoy your passion. And, we often look at aging well from a lot of different perspectives, and that creative side isn't always forefront when we talk about longevity and aging well. And so having you on here, showing people, that resilience can come at any age and creativity can come at any age. And, it's never too late to kind of start being creative, recreating yourself and diving deeper into who we are supposed to be. And so we'll just kind of end with keep being who you are and keep aging well.
My pleasure. It's always a great opportunity to speak with both of you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well.